Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the second virtual Patient Education Conference. The theme of the conference today is Keeping Well in Winter. My name is Caron Jones and I set up the Renal Social Work Service in Wrexham in North Wales, home of Ryan Reynolds' new football club. Please hold that thought. I'm also the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Professionals Group, a subgroup of the Welsh Renal Clinical Network. I work closely with the kidney charities in Wales to support the physical and psychological well-being of individuals. This event is a collaboration between Kidney Care UK, Kidney Wales and the Paul Popham Fund. The Welsh Renal Charities came together at the end of last year with the aim of organising a joint patient education conference to be held in South Wales in June this year. As you can imagine, that didn't happen, and the aim now is to reorganise it to take place in 2021. Until there is a confirmation from Public Health Wales that we can hold an official conference, the charities decided to organise a series of virtual conferences like this one to keep you updated on the guidance and services available during this time. Today, we have 5 excellent guest speakers with us, ready in their Zoom cameras as we speak. The conference will take an hour and a half. Everybody's microphones will be muted during the talks, but there will be an opportunity for questions after each presentation. Please use your Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and not the chat button, as this will not be functioning for the meeting. You will also have an opportunity at the end of the conference to give your feedback. With that said, I hope you'll gain some invaluable information this evening. I'm delighted to say that Dr. Catherine O'Leary will start the conference. Catherine is a clinical psychologist working in renal services and the cystic fibrosis service in Cardiff. She's worked for many years helping people with different health conditions to cope with their symptoms and treatments and live well. I will now hand you over to Catherine. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to talk today. I'm really pleased to be here today to talk about the systems that regulate our emotions. And what I hope people will come away with is more of an understanding about the way your mind works, what puts you under stress, what drives you and exhausts you, and what helps you recharge your batteries. And I hope this will allow you to take a step back and help you cope better this winter. Next slide, please. But let's start by talking about the brain. So as humans, we have these amazingly complex and tricky brains, and they've evolved over millions of years to ensure we survive to pass our genes on to the next generation. So a lot of the way we react to situations is just part of who we are. Psychologists believe we have 3 systems that regulate our emotions, and at any one time we're in one of these systems. These are drive, soothe, and threat. And I'm going to talk you through these one at a time. So the first system I'm going to talk about is threat. This one might be very familiar to you, and you can think of it as your alarm system. So for most people, it's very sensitive, and even slight threats will trigger it. And it has a better safe than sorry approach. So as humans, we have a bias towards processing threat-based information, which makes sense when you think of it from an evolutionary point of view. So if you would think about one of our ancestors walking through woodlands and coming across a rustling bush, those people who felt threatened and reacted and ran away lived to tell another day. Whereas those who hung about and weren't that concerned, well, they were much more likely to end up as dinner and less likely to pass on their genes. So this threat system can be triggered by external things, like maybe seeing a fire, but it can also be triggered by internal things. So that might be our thinking. It might be worrying about what might happen in the future, or it might be thinking about things that happened in the past. So what happens is our bodies get flooded with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, and our body prepares itself to fight or run away from danger or freeze. And we start to feel angry or anxious or depressed. And our thinking becomes very, very narrow. So the front part of our brain actually stops working. And this is the part of the brain that helps us think through things and problem solve. And we actually, only the back part of the brain really works. And that's very narrow thinking. So we're just very focused on dealing with the threat. Next slide. So as you can see, this is the threat system and all the things that I've just talked through. Next slide, please. So these are some of the things that might put us into threat. So at the moment, there's so much going on. There's COVID to deal with, and of course, that's very frightening. We might feel threatened from being apart from family or friends. Working at home and online make us feel threatened, doing things like this virtual conference and that kind of thing puts us into threat. And of course, we're having to deal with hospitals and appointments and blood tests, and all that kind of thing can put you into threat. Next slide, please. So our next system is drive. This is our system that gives us our get up and go. It's what motivates us, gets us out of bed in the morning, gets us achieving tasks, getting things done, and gives us feelings of excitement and achievement. And so for our ancestors, it would have been drive to get the things we needed to survive, like food and shelter and territory. But in the modern world, our drive systems push us to pursue things like money and success at work, or it could be training for a big event, a marathon, or climbing a mountain. So what happens is when we achieve things, we get a rush of a brain chemical called dopamine, which feels nice. It gives us a buzz. Our thinking is quite narrow, and there are changes in our sleep, and we're very focused on our achievement. Next slide, please. So these are the kind of things that might put us into drive. Like I said, training for a marathon. It might be trying to earn lots of money. And the COVID situation puts us into drives. There's lots of rules and regulations, lots of things we need to deal with to keep ourselves safe. And I've put a little picture of Christmas here as well, because of course, preparing for Christmas can put us into drive. So, you know, planning the perfect Christmas dinner, getting all the right presents, that's kind of the drive system being activated. Next slide, please. And so the final system is soothe. Now this, in evolutionary terms, we can think of as our caregiving system. So you might, if you think of mammals, they spend time grooming one another. And it's really important as a species that we care for one another and learn to receive care. So species that don't care for one another, where individuals go it alone from birth, like tadpoles, have a very low survival rate. So for humans, our success as a species is down to our ability to care for one another and receive care. So what happens to us? Well, we get a surge of a brain chemical called oxytocin, and this is sometimes called the love hormone. It makes us feel calm and relaxed. Everything's much slower, and we can recharge our batteries. And in fact, our soothing system acts as a brake to threat and drive, so it slows the other two down. We feel contented, and our thinking is much more open. So we're more reflective, and we're more compassionate towards ourselves and others. Next slide, please. So you can see a baby being soothed there. It's very instinctive to soothe a crying baby by rocking and holding a baby, and it feels good for the baby and for the parent. So things external, things like a hug can activate our soothe system, but it can also be activated internally. That might be meditation, or it might be a walk on the beach, or it might be a hot drink and a book. Next slide, please. So I'm going to explain this using 3 figures. So this is Father Christmas. So Father Christmas has a really big drive system. Of course, he's got a lot to do. He's got to get the elves working in his workshops. He's got to make his lists and check them twice. He's got to make sure the reindeers are ready. He's got to make sure all the right presents are going to the right children. So he needs a really big drive system. Of course, he does need a threat system because he will meet danger and he needs to deal with it appropriately. He might get stuck in a chimney, or it might be a foggy Christmas Eve, and he needs to know how to respond to that. But his soothe system's pretty good too. So once Christmas is done, Father Christmas kicks back in front of the fire with his cats and Mother Christmas. Next slide, please. So this is Kevin. And Kevin's from the movie Home Alone. And if you haven't seen it, Kevin wakes up to find his whole family have gone away on holiday and forgotten to take him, and he's left alone in the house. But not only that, there are burglars who are intent on breaking in. So of course, Kevin has a really big threat circle, and quite understandably, which you can see from his expression here. So, you know, he's got a lot of danger that he needs to react to. But Kevin has quite a big drive system. So he sets about building booby traps and trying to catch the burglars out. And he also has quite a big soothe system. So of course, any child home alone would indulge in those things that they're not ordinarily allowed to do, like eating lots of ice cream and sweets and watching movies and staying up late. Next slide, please. And finally, this is Buddy the elf. Now, Buddy is born in the North Pole and he has to go across to New York to find his father. So he has a big drive system. You know, he needs to get himself organized and get across New York and find his dad. He also has a smallish threat system, which he needs because he does meet dangers on his way and he needs to be able to react and respond. But Buddy has a huge soothe circle, so he does lots to make himself feel soothed and calm and relaxed. He likes sweets and candy, he likes arts and crafts, he loves singing alone and with other people, and Buddy likes hugs. Next slide, please. So none of these systems are bad. They're all important and essential for our survival, but it's all about balance. So if you imagine each of these systems as a balloon and they're in a box, if one of the balloons is really inflated a lot, then the other two are going to be small because there's not much room for them. And that's when things can feel out of balance. So if you imagine the red balloon is filling the box, somebody is going to feel under stress and distressed at that time. Similarly, if the green balloon is filling the box and the other two balloons are much smaller, then that's not great either because that person's not going to have much drive, they're not going to be able to get themselves out of bed and get going in the morning, and they may not react to danger appropriately. Next slide, please. So what are your circles like? If you had to imagine your 3 circles, what would they look like? Would the threat circle be bigger than the rest? And if you think about it, some of the things that we are facing this winter might put us into threat and drive. So you might be dealing with appointments relating to your kidney failure or a kidney disease. There might be winter storms and difficult weather to deal with. We've got to deal with all that COVID is bringing to us and hospital appointments. So for many people this year, their systems will be very much out of balance. Next slide, please. So what I want to spend the last few minutes thinking about is what you can do to help build or grow your soothing circle. So I've taken some ideas from a really lovely website of things that you can do to help soothe yourself. And this uses all the senses. So it might be things like low lighting or candles. It might be using sound, so sounds of nature. It might be touch, a soft blanket, or a warm bath, or smell like aromatherapy, or taste. So there's lots of different ways you can soothe yourself. And it might be that you need to try these things and see what works for you. Being connected with other people is really, really important and much more difficult this year. So think about the ways that you can stay connected. It might be telephone or video, by writing letters or emails. And some people have been creating special socially distanced greetings. So when they see people and they can't hug them, what can they do instead? So for some people, it might be placing their hands on their hearts as a greeting, or if you've got good balance, it might be a toe bump, or it might be learning the sign, the British Sign Language sign for love. And children are very good at soothing. So it's worth thinking back to what you used to do when you were a child. What was it you did that helped you feel calm? Was it spending time in nature? Was it music or art? Did you do jigsaws or reading? And also think about the way that you speak to yourself. Oftentimes we can be quite critical with ourselves, and then that pushes us into threat. So when we talk harshly to ourselves, we can trigger and activate our threat circle. So what can be really helpful is to think about how you talk to friends and what you would do to encourage them and help them feel calm, and then use the same voice on yourself. So for example, if there was a disaster this Christmas and you burnt the turkey, instead of telling yourself you're useless and worthless and you've ruined Christmas, maybe think about what you would say to someone you loved. You know, that it didn't matter, that it would be okay, that Christmas dinner would be fine. And that can help avoid increasing your threat circle. Next slide, please. So for my final thoughts, this winter may be harder than normal. There may be lots to activate your threat and drive systems, and feeling distressed is understandable, and it's okay not to be okay. Next slide, please. But I just want to end by thinking about your Christmas tree. What colour are your lights? Is there more red? Is there a lot of blue on your tree? And what can you do to increase the number of green lights on your Christmas tree to help you cope better? Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. That really was informative. We now have an opportunity to take some questions if there are any. If not, we've got time. Well, we did have one that was forwarded previously, which somebody was asking whether you have any top tips for a person who finds things overwhelming. And I think your last slide hit on that somewhat, but would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think lots of people are feeling overwhelmed at the moment. It's a common thing, isn't it? Everybody's feeling tired, and the things that we do to recharge our batteries, we just can't do at the moment. So the things that we do to look after ourselves, you know, like spending time with family and friends, is just not available to us. So I think the first thing to say is that actually it's understandable to be feeling overwhelmed. So some of those things can help. So thinking about what you can do to soothe yourself, to look after yourself. You know, other things that can help is to talk to your family and friends and let them know how you're feeling. You know, and if you're really struggling, then talk to your renal team and see what help and support they can give you. I know we're going to give out some information after this, and there will be details of websites that are put out by Cardiff and Vale Health Board that people can go to as well to find support for their psychological well-being.
That's great. Thank you so much, Catherine.
You're welcome.
It's now time to move on to the next presentation, and I'm pleased to introduce Hayley Isaac from the Paul Popham Fund. Hayley is a qualified counsellor, and today, with the help of 2 other volunteers, will be providing details about how the Paul Popham charity can support patients and families to remain well over the winter. So over to you, Hayley.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, I'm Hayley. I'm the Support Services Coordinator at the Paul Popham Fund. I manage the peer support and counselling services at the charity and also coordinate all individual and group supports provided by Paul Popham Fund. I'm going to chat to you today about the various support services that we provide to kidney patients in Wales. I'm also joined by two of our volunteers. We've got Joe Townsend and Helen Jones, and they're also going to chat to you about the support that they provide to kidney patients. Next slide, please. So the first service I'm going to chat to you today about is the Peer Mentor service. This was formerly called the Befriending service, and you may have seen our posters around your renal units, or maybe even received one from a member of your renal team. So what is peer support? Well, peer support or peer mentorship is a form of support which is informed by mutual experience. So in this case, it's kidney disease. All peer mentors are people who have personal experience or have lived through a specific experience, kidney disease, and peer mentees, or the people who access the service, are either new to that experience or experiencing difficulty at that time. Peer mentors can help and provide support. They can source information about kidney disease and treatments. They can help people to identify coping techniques. They can help patients to manage living with kidney disease and maybe come to terms with their diagnosis. And they can also provide signposting to further methods of support. As I said, all of our peer mentors are people who have got lived experience of kidney disease. They are either patients themselves or family members, carers, or health professionals who've worked with kidney patients. People accessing peer support, the people who may access the peer support service are anyone who is living with kidney disease. So that could be patients themselves, family members, carers, siblings, even live donors. And our services are available to anyone living with kidney disease throughout Wales. At the moment, support is being provided over the telephone or online due to the COVID pandemic, but originally support was provided face-to-face, and we hope to be able to continue that at some point during 2021. If any patients or family members would like to access this service, then they can call our care line on 0800 038 8989, or they can email support@paulpophamfund.co.uk. And like I said, we can provide emotional support, information, advice and tips, but most importantly, an understanding listening ear. I'm going to hand over to Joe Townsend now, who is one of our volunteers who provides support through the Peer Mentor service. And he's going to give a bit of information about his experience of that.
Hi, my name's Joe Townsend. I've been a peer mentor now for about 2.5 to 3 years. I've had kidney problems since 2004. I've had 2 transplants. I'm on my second one now, and it's 5 years old now. Started off on CAPD, done PD, done hemodialysis and nocturnal dialysis. What I want to talk to you about is I've been doing this now for peer mentoring for 3 years. I want to do this to help patients who've either come into, who've found out they got chronic kidney disease or renal failure and having to starting dialysis. So just want to be there to support them as best as I can, and talking about the ways to deal with getting on dialysis, the treatment they're going to be having, and also hopefully transplant if that's the route they want to go down to. In my job, I'm an ambulance driver, so I do bring patients in for dialysis, and this is where I do a lot of my contacts. I speak to a lot of renal patients about different things. Some people just want to have a chat with me about certain stuff to do with dialysis or kidney problems. If I can help them out, I will try my best to point them in a direct direction, if that's to the Paul Popham team with Hayley or Joe, or towards the nurses. A lot of them do ask me the best treatment. What's the best treatment? I can't say that because everyone's different, but I tell them my experiences and what I think is better for me. what hopefully might be good for them as well, but everyone's completely different. So with just by being there and letting them get things off their chests, just to be there for talking to them, a lot of them just want to have a chat 9 times out of 10. What's really nice to hear. And if I can help them, like I said, I point them in the right direction. But I've also been doing the care lines as well during thing, but this is getting covered later on. I've been helping do that. What's been different experience because it's not meeting face to face. But like, if you've got any questions or answers, I'd be happy to answer them for you later on. Thank you, Hayley.
Thank you, Joe. So as you heard from Joe, all of our peer mentors have got extensive experience of kidney disease. They're all very experienced patients, and they're all living full and active lives, and they hope to provide the support then to help other patients do the same. Next slide, please. Another support project that we provide are support groups. So we've got various support groups within the charity, but they were all developed to give patients and family members the opportunity to meet with others who've experienced similar situations. As you can see from the list there, we've got various groups with more in development. Each group runs slightly differently. So for example, Transplant Cafe, this is for post-transplant patients, and this provides information, advice and support in the transplant theme, and we're joined every month by a guest speaker from the transplant service. We've then got the Parents and Carers Cafe. This was set up in collaboration with the psychology team in the Heath Hospital, and also alongside 2 parents of children with kidney disease. We've got a Home Therapies Kidney Cafe, which we were hoping to launch right at the start of the COVID pandemic, but unfortunately that's been paused for the time being. And we're currently in the development of a pre-CKD kidney cafe, which would be aimed at patients who are new to kidney disease. So the various different cafes are all there, as I said, to share information and advice. Each kidney cafe or support group has its own associated Facebook group. These are private or closed Facebook groups, so any discussion that takes place in them is private and is not publicly available. But we also have monthly meetings for each kidney cafe as well. These monthly meetings at the moment are running virtually due to COVID, obviously, but in the future, we hope to resume face-to-face meetings with them. I can see that there's a question, which is, are there any support groups in Mid Wales? Well, at the moment, as we're running these virtually, these support groups are available to patients throughout Wales. So if there's any patients in North, Mid or South Wales that would like to join any of these groups, then you are very, very welcome to either join the Facebook group or contact us and we'll send you the links for the monthly virtual meetings. And then post-COVID, when we start to develop or resume our face-to-face meetings, we are hoping to expand these throughout Wales, but we'll keep you posted on that. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, if you do want to join the Facebook groups, if you go to our Facebook page, scroll across to the groups tab, there's a list of them all there. Next slide, please. The next service I'm going to talk to you about is the Care Line. So this is a dedicated line for kidney patients and families. It's there for drop-in support or information and advice on anything related to kidney disease. It's staffed by our peer mentor team, so our volunteers all have shifts on the Care Line. I take some shifts as well as Joe, our CEO. So we're all there to support and provide information whenever it's needed. The Care Line runs 9 AM till 6 PM, 7 days a week. And there'll always be somebody on the end of the phone who can provide information and advice. And if we don't know the answer straight away, we can find that out for you and get it to you straight away. Over the Christmas period, our hours will be reduced slightly. So from the 21st of December till the 3rd of January, we will be open 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. and we will be closed on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But any other days within that period, if you call 10 a.m. till 4 p.m, there'll always be a member of the team there to answer any questions and provide support. You can also call this line to find out information about any of our support groups, to request the links for these support groups. You can also call the line to refer yourself to the peer mentor service or the counselling service, or if you've got any general burning questions about anything kidney related. The number there on the side is the care line number, so it's 0800 038 8989. I'm going to hand over to Helen now. Helen Jones is one of our befrienders, peer mentors, who takes a shift on the care line, and she is going to provide some information about her experience of doing that.
Hello, I'm Helen. I've been a kidney patient for about 25 years, and out of 5 children, 4 of us needed transplants. I received my, I started off on peritoneal dialysis, and then I went to hemodialysis. And in 2006, I was lucky to have a transplant from Barcelona. But in 2014, I had brain lymphoma and my kidney failed in 2015. So I'm back on dialysis now, but it's different this time. I'm doing hemodialysis at home overnight. And I've got to say, this is the best treatment I've had. And I always encourage patients, obviously it's their decision, but I always encourage them to try nocturnal because my days are free and I've got no diet restrictions. I'm feeling a lot better. Well, I'm walking most days. Well, in October, I walked 100 kilometers in 2 weeks. And I don't think I could have done that when I was on dialysis the first time. I wish there was, I'm on the care line as well. And I wish there was something like this when I was on dialysis the first time, because I could have done with support then. But I enjoy speaking on the care line to different patients, because most of them say to me, you understand what I'm going through. My family don't understand when I'm feeling tired and this and that. And oh gosh, I haven't had many calls during lockdown, but I've had 1 or 2. And if it's something they need counselling, I refer them on to Hayley in the Paul Popham office. I can't think of anything else to say.
That's great. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. Next slide, please. So if any patients would like to get in touch or engage with any of our support services, you can call the care line on 0800 038 8989, or you can email me at support@paulpophamfund.co.uk. Also, if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you will see various different information about our support services, but you'll also see, catch up with news and updates. And our website, paulpophamfund.co.uk, will also have more information about all of these. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hayley, Helen and Joe, for sharing your personal stories and the experiences of your work with the Paul Popham Fund. There is one additional question that's come through, Hayley, and that was somebody from North Wales, I take it, asking whether the support groups will be coming to North Wales, whether you will look to physically set them up in North Wales once COVID is behind us.
So initially, these groups were launched in South Wales with the South Wales renal teams, but a side effect, I suppose, of the COVID pandemic is it made it very easy for us to expand the reach of the support groups. So we're very lucky that we have been able to extend these groups throughout Wales. So right now, patients throughout Wales, that's Mid, North and South Wales, can access our online meetings. They can also join the Facebook groups associated to each kidney cafe. In the future, when we do start to plan the face-to-face meetings, we are hoping to launch these in the North and Mid Wales as well. However, I haven't got a date for that, unfortunately, because obviously it's so uncertain at the moment, but there are plans in place for that to happen.
That's brilliant, Hayley, and I hope you'll have more people attend the virtual groups. It would be so. Thank you very much. Now it's time for our next speaker, and her name is Claire Weeks. Claire is a physiotherapist from Morriston Hospital in Swansea, and today she'll talk about the importance of exercise to maintain well-being over winter, and we'll also offer some solutions and tips to help us stay motivated. So over to you. Thank you, Claire.
Hi, thank you ever so much for that introduction. Next slide, thank you. So yes, I'm talking about keeping physically well over winter. And I know it's quite difficult for all of us to stay motivated when it's very cold and wet outside, but hopefully in the next 10 minutes or so, maybe we can have a look at how to kind of get motivated and get out there. Next slide, please. So this is actually one of my most favorite quotes, is take care of your body because it is the only place you have to live in. And I think we've really got to remember that, because there's an awful lot of challenges that come with kidney disease that make us not want to do anything and to think that maybe you can't exercise as easily. But there are plenty examples I've had during my career of amazing things, like Helen was saying, her walking of 100 kilometers is absolutely brilliant. So this slide is talking about tips to stay well in winter. And I think it's even more important to look after yourself during these cold and wet winter months. Most tips here you can see are common sense. You know, you have to eat properly. You need to stay active. Staying connected as well would be good. And the other things that come with what we've been going on with this pandemic is frequent hand washing and looking after yourself that way. And the other thing is to sleep well as well. And I think during this pandemic, I think all of us have been launched into staying connected and learning how to use Zoom and all of those sorts of things as well. Next slide, please. So apart from exercise, when I was having a look at what to speak about, I looked up all these government documents on keeping warm and keeping well. Now, there's some lovely advice if you have a look at the government website on kind of how to look after yourself physically in the household. So things like keeping your house temperature quite warm. My house is freezing because we haven't had the fire on today. So they recommend that you keep it at around about 18 degrees C. They talk about keeping adequate food in the house and to check. And one of the things you can do in relation to that is to check whether you're eligible for help to actually keep your house warm. And there are some helpful resources that you can look up as well. And as you can see on the second one down, keeping active and trying to be as healthy as well will benefit you as well. For the healthcare professionals who are listening, if there are any, there's a really lovely e-learning module called Helping People Living in Cold Homes. And I actually did this e-learning module today to just have a look what it's all about. And they had some really lovely advice on local services for people living in cold homes and how to access all of these things as well. So there's plenty of information out there. Next slide, please. So going on to motivation, I've got a picture. Oh, yeah, there we go. A bit too quick. So I've got a slide here showing a lady called Shauna Coxey, who is a Team GB climber. And the other picture, Joe, this isn't the picture with the animation. And then there's a picture of me trying to emulate this amazing Olympic athlete. And I may have got it, may not have got it, but there we are. So there is so many things online to try and keep us motivated and to do things. This can sometimes be very overwhelming as the diversity of stuff is huge. The most important thing to do is to figure out what motivates us and what we're actually going to enjoy. And I always appreciate that climbing is not for everyone. And I remind Joe of the Paul Popham that I really do not like running. So there's, you know, each to their own, I would say. And there is no point in forcing yourself to do a workout that you're never going to do again. By all means, have a go at the different things. And if you don't like them, then you mustn't punish yourself. Move on to the next thing. Good results come from sustainable and repeatable programs. So find something that you enjoy. What motivates each of us to work out is different. Maybe it is a health problem. Maybe it's an issue with sleep. Maybe it's a special event that you want to look good for. Having energy to maybe play with your children or your grandchildren, or simply feeling healthier in your own skin. But also, science says that competition is a strong motivator to get people to work out. So determining the why for your exercise is very, very important. But please don't be afraid of competition. I think a lot of us are put off having a sense of maybe you'll fail, or maybe you won't do very well, or maybe you'll be judged. But you know, it really does not matter. If I enter a climbing competition, they put me in the over 14s category, and I am clearly many, many, many years older than 14. But you know what? As my mother said to me, it's the taking part that counts. So there was also a piece of research in 2015 showing patients describing how exercise has improved their health conditions. And overall, they said they felt a lot better. They understood how it could protect against further health decline. It helped with their pain management. It preserved their mobility and their muscle strength. Plus, it helped with their mental health and cognitive function as well. Next slide, please. So out of interest, I asked some of my work colleagues what motivated them to start exercising or why they continue to exercise. Personally, I have exercised all my life, and my parents were keen runners. So the importance of having an active lifestyle is in my daily routine, and has been for as long as I can remember. Our reasons to maintain active also change as we get older. So you can have a look at the green quote there. And it said that the fact, this was a 50-year-old work colleague of mine, and she said, well, the fact that I was approaching 50 and I wanted to start living, and I didn't want age to be a barrier. And I think with things like kidney disease, we don't want these things to be a barrier to us. So it's all about getting out there and seeing what you can do. Another of my work colleagues was saying that the fact that she knew she was unable to run without feeling really short of breath and really rough, and she wanted to be able to do it. And in 2 years, she's now been able to achieve a sub 30-minute 5K, which is brilliant. And she's just had her 51st birthday. Another of my colleagues who's female 28, she started to exercise because she really wanted to feel good about herself. And I think there's a lot of things on Facebook and social media with really unachievable looks and all of this, and really and truly you've got to feel good about yourself inside. And I think exercise, physical activity, dancing is the one thing that will give you a boost, a little bit like what Catherine was saying about our psyches and how we feel good about ourselves. Next slide, please. So I've got a few role models on this slide. There are all kinds of things I've tried out as well. So this is just some examples of motivations to keep an active lifestyle. I've done Joe Wicks, which I thoroughly enjoy. I've been insane enough to do Insanity with Shaun T as well. I've also had a look at the Davina workouts, which are absolutely brilliant. And I think Davina McCall, at the end of her workouts, she really has a good chat about what motivates her to work out, and the fact that she has never regretted doing her exercise. And the regret comes when you find excuses not to do anything. It also does not have to be this way. So you don't have to be jumping around like a lunatic. I know certainly the Shaun T exercise plans are fairly challenging. Many of us can walk the dog, go to the park with the kids or the grandkids. But what is useful to know is the government guidelines. Now, the guidelines recommend that you do 150 minutes a week of moderate intense exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. You need to also build a strength workout twice a week and also a balance workout twice a week. Now that sounds an awful lot, but if you have a look at things like Joe Wicks and stuff, you can do a really good strength workout in 10 minutes and you really do feel like you've worked hard. The other thing is to break up periods of inactivity. Now, you can do all the running you want after work, but if you've been sat still for 8 hours, then any amount of exercise in the evening is not going to counteract your sedentary lifestyle. So I shall challenge this next slide. Next slide, please. So I've put this one in because it just gives an example of what you can do, maybe at work or in your living room, to get you moving. It does not have to be an hour-long run session outdoors, and a few simple stretches at your desk or during the advert breaks at home can make a difference to you. It could be a good idea to have a poster like this above your computer or something, or around the office, or up on your fridge at home. I was going to say that I always know if I've sat at my desk for too long because we have motion sensors on our lights, and I am plunged into darkness if I stay sitting still for too long. So the only way to get light back in the office is to get up off the chair and actually go and put it back on again. Next slide, please. So I wanted to have a little chat about a few barriers to exercise. I've said this before, the days are colder, so motivation to exercise is a lot harder. And I wanted to talk a little bit about dressing well for outdoor exercise. And you need to make sure you put plenty of layers on. So even if you're walking or you're running, you're going to warm up as you go along. So you may want to take layers off, which you can then tie around your waist. And then when you're kind of cooling down or coming back from your run or your walk, you can then put the layers back on again, nice and slowly. But that all depends, you know, on how you're feeling. So it's better to layer up than to put one massive jacket on. Okay, next slide. So the last thing is, whoop. So there's a little video of me failing and falling off the wall. Don't take yourself too seriously. Failure and falling off is just a progression of learning. one of the most useful things is that goal setting. It's useful to set these yourselves and what you feel is right for you. I always tell my clients or my work colleagues to keep a diary and look back at your training sessions and your achievements. Autonomy, or setting the goals yourself, is a very important factor, but a lot of people have found that they want their goals reviewed by a professional to kind of check that they're going in the right direction. Quite a few of my patients and work colleagues like to feed back to me on their successes and their failures. It's nice to discuss what went well and maybe also have a chat about how to do it better next time, or what exercises you can do to kind of benefit. As I said before, do not take yourself too seriously. Most training sessions, I will have some kind of fail and all my children will laugh at me as I land face first on the floor. But it's all part of, and there we go again, there we are. It's all part of your progression. Next slide. So I just wanted to end here. This couple you see dancing, I don't know whether a few of you have seen them on Facebook, but what an inspiring couple. They are still jiving well into their older adult age. And I just think they're such a positive influence for all of us. Also, you can see here is some useful links that I've used in this presentation. And, you know, I'm here if anyone has got any other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire, for that motivating presentation. I agree completely with the statement that exercise has the equal value to an antidepressant at times. That getting out can be such a boost to the well-being.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you what you would say to individuals who fear they may endanger their health further by exercising. What would you encourage them to do?
So it's kind of a common misconception. I think you're more likely, so okay, for an example, I do a lot of the intradialytic cycling, and I've always been challenged on, you know, what are the risks about this? Because people are already having dialysis, their blood is going through the machine. Why would you put them on a bicycle? And the answer is, and there's lots of research out there, that you're more at risk staying sedentary than you are from doing exercise. So you have to kind of weigh up the risks. So if it's wet, icy, snowy, and you are not confident about your balance, then do you know what? Don't go outside and don't go walking, because the risk of falls may be too high for you. Start off slow. Like I said, there's the Joe Wicks especially has got some like 10-minute workouts for older adults. They've got short workouts that you can do sitting down in the chair. They've got workouts to do with your kids. And it's all about starting slowly. And I think you learn your limitations as you go along. So doing a nice workout, sitting down and moving your arms up and down, maybe do some sit to stand. You can start gauging what your limitations are. Is that all right?
That's great. I just wonder whether you use the exercise referral scheme down in South Wales. It's something we use it in the north, you know, where people are quite fearful of getting out there again. It's a really good scheme we find it's a really good scheme. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
So pre-pandemic, there were quite a lot of really useful resources. So if someone had left hospital at any age, patient, there were either physios who could come into your house and help you exercise. That would then progress to some exercise classes in the community run by physiotherapists. And after gaining your confidence there, then we could do the NERS referral, the National Exercise Referral Scheme, where you could either have a personal trainer for 16 weeks, or they would do exercise classes like circuits classes in your local gyms. So there is a kind of tiered approach, like a step-by-step approach on how to get yourself back to the gym. Now, personally, I'm not a gym goer, but it's a really good opening to build up your confidence and have someone with you who can monitor your, you know, your blood pressure, your heart rate, and have a chat to you about all these things. And then you could be then confident enough to go out to maybe the walking groups or the running groups or doing something yourself.
Yeah, it's a great service, isn't it? I think that's one for people to bear in mind if they are fearful of doing any damage, or perhaps in the first instance talk it through with their doctor, specialist nurse, or physio if they have one. That's
Yeah, well, definitely. I try and motivate our consultants that I am at the end of a phone, and if someone comes into clinic and they have a problem that they want to work out, then, you know, I can be available in our clinical hours. And I know I've had a few referrals from West Wales where I'll do a phone consultation as well if people need to have a chat to me about anything.
a great service. Thank you, Claire, so much. So in keeping with the exercise theme, we now move on to a video from Geraint John. Geraint received a kidney transplant 17 years ago at the Heath Hospital in Cardiff, and says he has been fortunate to have enjoyed excellent health since. He has been a volunteer at the Paul Popham Fund for over 5 years, starting as a befriender, now an organiser. A self-confessed walking addict, he has organised a walking group for kidney patients, their families and carers, nurses too. So it's over to you, Geraint.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for the introduction. As Karen said, I'm Geraint John, worked with the Paul Popham Fund for the past 5 years, starting as a befriender, as it was called. Now the name has changed to a peer mentor. But we started a walking group in April 2019, which was quite successful indeed. It was based very low impact walking. And I'm sure that as you heard Claire just saying, walking is an excellent introduction into exercise because it's very low impact. Obviously, the walking group was curtailed somewhat by the pandemic, and so we've just started in October a virtual walking group. Before I go on to discuss that, can we play the video, please, Joe?
The Walk for Health group was set up by Geraint John, peer mentor for the Paul Popham Fund, in April 2019, and run once a month on Sunday mornings. The aim of the group is to encourage kidney patients, carers, parents, and nurses to get active in a gentle way, meet new friends and chat to people who understand in a social setting. Geraint, who himself had a kidney transplant 17 years ago, is a keen walker. In addition to the walking group, he goes on regular walks around the Neath Valley, including key landmarks like the Moss House Reservoir, the Ivy Tower in Torna, and many beautiful lakes and ponds, where he meets many local residents including Crackling Rosie. During lockdown, the regular Sunday morning walks have not been possible. So we have set up a virtual walking group with the aim climbing many different mountains across the UK. Some of the mountains the 13 of us in the group will be virtually climbing include Pen y Fan in the Brecon Beacons, Scafell Pike in the Lake District, and Ben Nevis in Scotland. Each walker who participates in our virtual walks get a Paul Popham Fund Wally hat and earn a badge for every goal achieved. Our aim is to return to our monthly walks once we are allowed to do so. For more information, please contact Geraint on 07774 619 473 or follow us on Facebook, PPF Walk for Health, or email inquiries at paulpophamfund.co.uk.
Thanks, Joe. Well, mostly it's been said in the video. We've started this virtual walk for health, and it said 13 on the video, but this week we've encouraged, or 2 other people have joined our group, so we now have a group of 15. The way it works is obviously we walk individually or with family members, and for every mile walked or every 20 minutes walked, we gain 2 meters in height. The walkers in the group put their mileage or times into me via WhatsApp or Facebook or by email, and I accumulate all the mileage, transfer it into meters height, and we climb peaks virtually, of course. We've just climbed the highest peak in Northern Ireland, Slieve Donard, and that's one of the goal peaks where there's badges awarded. So we're just waiting for the badges to be sent out now. We started climbing Pen y Fan, and we only started this week, and we're already 480 something meters up the climb. In total, Pen y Fan is 886 meters high. From there, we go on to Cadair Idris, which we virtually climb. And then we go Scafell Pike, Snowdon, and our last peak in the British Isles is going to be Ben Nevis. We then possibly will be considering stiffer climbs, possibly in Europe. The beauty of virtually walking is that when you organize any group, the time or day you actually pick doesn't suit everybody, and so not everyone can make it. But virtually, you can walk on the day you choose at the time you would choose. So therefore, it frees you up and you walk at your own pace, etc., etc. So if anybody's interested in joining us, we'd love to see you. Walking is by far, in my opinion, humble opinion, the best method to get into exercise. It certainly clears the mind. If you go on walks and you're on the top of a mountain with no friends but sheep, possibly, or the pig like you've seen in the video, it's a tremendous way just to relieve any stress or pressure, and it's a fabulous way to start to get healthy. As I say, look on the Paul Popham Fund Facebook page, and if you go to the groups there, you can see the walking group, or we've got our own walking group page, it's the Paul Popham Fund Walk for Health. You've seen my mobile number earlier. I'll give it again. It's 07774 619 473. If you'd like any further info, drop me a text, WhatsApp, email, and I'd be delighted to come back to you. And you'd be very welcome to join the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraint. That again is inspiring, and with COVID denying and restricting people's lives in so many ways, it's great to see how you've adapted to ensure you can continue your walking, but also support others. Views of those mountains are so uplifting. I was just wondering which was your favourite?
Oh,
why?
Oh gosh, I am going to name drop here. I was lucky enough. I climbed to Base Camp Everest, raising funds for the Paul Popham Fund, and that is an indescribable moment in my life. It was absolutely fabulous. Favorite, I do walk the Neath Valley a lot, as was said in the video, and Kevin Morfydd on the top. You're looking right down over the Swansea Bay, over the sea. You can see all the way up the Neath Valley on a lovely day. It's breathtaking. So locally, it would be the top of the Neath Mountain. Internationally, you couldn't beat Everest.
Oh wow, sounds amazing. Can't wait to be free and have a go and inspire other people to get there as well.
I'm taking your name and I'll be in touch. I'll put you in our group.
Thank you, Geraint.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. So finally, this evening, we meet my colleague, Harriet Williams. Harriet is a renal dietitian based at Ysbyty Gwynedd, Bangor in North Wales. And Harriet also leads and manages the wider dietetic service across Anglesey and Gwynedd. She will finish tonight's presentations talking about eating well to keep well this winter. Harriet has pre-recorded her presentation, but she will be available to take questions at the end, so please feel free to send some through. So over to you. Thank you, Harriet.
Hello, my name's Harriet Williams and I'm a kidney specialist dietitian. I'm going to talk to you this evening about eating well to keep well this winter. So let's have a quick look at what's on the menu. So we've only got a short amount of time tonight, and I'm really just going to give you a flavour of sort of the importance of advice, importance of it being individualised to you and your needs, and how a dietitian can help you. Then we'll get into looking at a little bit more around the sorts of dietary considerations that we bear in mind when we're working with people with kidney disease. And I'll finish just with a couple of suggestions of where you might like to look for further information. So what is the advice for people with kidney disease? Well, the advice will be very dependent on a lot of different factors, and I don't know who's out there listening to this today, so it's very difficult for me to give specifics. The advice will be dependent on your stage of kidney disease. You might be somebody who's receiving dialysis or had a transplant, and that might alter what your needs are. Many of you might have other conditions such as diabetes, IBS, celiac disease, and these come with their own dietary considerations, so we might need to bear a couple of things in mind. Different treatments and medications will have an influence. And probably one of the most important things is that we need to know what your choices and preferences are. So some of you might have religious or cultural food choices, or you may be vegetarian, or you might be vegan. And we don't all like to eat the same foods. And it's really important that whatever the considerations are for you, that you work with a dietitian, because they can help you get around nearly any sort of dietary changes you need to make, find alternatives, and help you to continue to enjoy your diet. And that really is our job. So it's about helping your diet to be as free as possible. So if you haven't seen a dietitian yet, but you're under the care of a kidney specialist team, please ask to see one. One of the first things we will look at is getting the balance right. So we have this Eat Well plate that you might have seen, and it shows a proportion, a decent amount of fruit and veg in there in a day, some carbohydrate rich foods, that's your pasta, rice, potatoes, cereals and so on. A proportion of food in the day that should come from dairy, so milk, yogurts, cheese, that sort of thing. And then protein. Now I'm just going to pick up on the protein because that's something we talk about quite a bit in kidney disease. So that's your fish, meat, eggs, chicken, or if you're vegetarian, the alternatives to these, or beans, lentils, pulses and so on. It's really important that you have the right amount of protein for your stage of kidney disease. So some people will be advised to moderate the amount they eat. Other people who are on certain treatments, dialysis, might actually be encouraged to eat a little bit more, and that's why you need to speak to a dietitian about that. There are some foods that sit slightly outside of this circle, those foods that are high in fat and sugar and salt, and that's because some of these are not essential to good health. But of course, we all like to enjoy these foods, and it's about having them in moderation if we do have them. The other sorts of things that we think about, particularly in kidney disease, are the things I've got up on the screen here. I'm briefly going into these. Firstly, we look at potassium. So potassium is a substance that, if you like to think about it, keeps your nerves working properly, and that includes your heartbeat and keeping that regular. If your kidneys aren't working so well, sometimes levels of potassium in blood can rise, and that's when your kidneys team should let you know if that happens. They would look at a trend, and if you need to make any changes, they will ask you to speak to a dietitian. Please don't worry about this. This is why we take blood from you so regularly. We keep an eye on these things so that we worry about them and you don't need to, and we will let you know if you need to make changes. Phosphate is another substance that we look at. So if you like to think of this as, it's like calcium, it's what makes up your bones and your teeth. And again, it's something that if your levels in your blood are a bit too high, your team might ask you to see a dietitian to look at where you might be able to cut down on this. Other people might be asked to take medications with their food called phosphate binders that mean that you don't absorb so much of that substance into your blood. Salts I'll go into just in a little bit more detail in a moment, because salt's actually something that the vast majority of people, whether they have kidney disease or not, are generally advised to eat a little bit less of. And in kidney disease, that's no different. Fluids, some of you have noticed, or you might be in the situation where you are passing less urine, you might have swelling, and your kidney team might have advised you therefore to be careful about the amount of liquids that you drink in the day, and given you something called a fluid restriction or a fluid allowance. Again, your kidney specialist team will let you know if this is something you need to think about. In terms of salt, well, salts can have an impact in increasing your blood pressure and meaning that your body holds on to more water. So most people with kidney disease will be advised to try and reduce the amount of salt they eat. And there's a couple of things that we advise as dietitians that can be really handy. So if you know how to read a food label, you can often find some great alternatives and foods that are lower in salt. And I would say salts for people with kidney disease is probably one of the most important things you can look out for on a food label, and the traffic light system makes it fairly easy for us to see what's either red, amber or green there. And this is where you might find some foods that were traditionally higher in salt, things like sausages, burgers, processed meals, pies and so on, but actually we're finding that there are more lower salt options available now, so you might find ones there that are amber rather than red. It's also important to think about portion size when you're looking at salty food. So if you're having a little shaving of parmesan on top of pasta, that's a very small amount. If you're going to open a 150-gram sharing bag of crisps and manage to eat your way through it, then that's going to be a substantial amount of salt into your diet. So it's about looking for those slightly better options and keeping the portion size down if you have a taste for those higher salt foods. There's also lots of other ways that you can enjoy flavouring your food. So garlic, lemon, herbs, spices, pepper, vinegar, they're all absolutely fine, and you can use those freely to give your food a bit more taste. Now, in order to think about some of those other dietary elements that I've mentioned earlier, I'm just going to have a look at another meal that we might be eating at some point this year, later this year, some of us, your Christmas dinner. So bearing in mind all the things that we've talked about that you might need to watch out for, how does that translate into the sort of advice that we might give as a dietitian? Well, let's pick up on potassium here. So if you've been advised that your potassium level tends to run high and you need to watch out for it, there's ways we can adapt what you eat so that you can still enjoy those foods. So your vegetables, so long as they are boiled, they will lose about half the potassium into the water. If you throw that away and don't use it to make gravy, you'll have gotten rid of a lot of potassium there. Foods like potatoes, it'd be great if they are boiled, because again, that will cut down the potassium by half. If they're dried off and put in some oil and roasted, you can still enjoy, a roast potato with your Christmas dinner. There are some foods on this plate that are a bit salty, stuffing and sausages, but it's Christmas Day and small amounts in moderation will be fine. There may also be some foods with some phosphate in this meal, and if you are on phosphate binders, if you're prescribed them, as mentioned briefly earlier, you would need to take them with this meal. But in that way, you can still enjoy that occasion. It's just about making those tweaks. If we take another example, so looking at the desserts here that might be around at Christmas time, everything that I've got on the page there is low in the minerals that I've discussed. So low in potassium and low in phosphate. So these foods would be fine from that point of view. If you have diabetes, you can speak to your diabetes team or diabetes dietitian, and they can advise you as to how you can incorporate puddings and what changes you might need to make to your medications to enjoy those in your diet. There are some foods that are higher in potassium that are around at Christmas time. They're things like dried fruits. So if you were to have mince pies, pudding, Christmas cake, if you really enjoy those, it's about keeping the portion moderate. So a slice of Christmas pudding on Christmas Day will be fine. Just perhaps if your potassium is high, you wouldn't want to be having your Christmas cake, your mince pies all on the same day. Instead, you might spread out the amounts and just have small quantities. There are other sorts of clever recipes as well, things like you can see on the screen there, that sort of Christmas pudding ice cream that use a little bit of that ingredient with a lot of dried fruit in, mix it with ice cream, which means that you can actually have a more generous portion size, but you're having less dried fruit. And that's exactly the kind of things that we can talk to you about as a dietitian as to how you can still enjoy lots of foods in your diet. Alcohol. So what's the advice for this around sort of Christmas time? Well, the advice isn't much different to the general population. You need to be careful with certain medications, and if it's not clear on the instructions list or that you have with medication, check with your pharmacist as to whether you ought not to be having medications with certain things. Then the advice is the same as for everyone really, just to be careful not to have more than 14 units a week on a regular basis. And I should have there just an example of what those units are. So a single shot measure would be 1 unit, a can of lager around 2 units, and a medium glass of average strength wine is around 2 units as well. So it's just about moderation. If you're somebody that's been advised to watch out on the amounts of fluid that you drink, we'd probably say actually if you like a spirit, then it's probably better to go down that route than having a pint of beer or lager. And if you need to watch out for your potassium, we can tell you about which drinks are lower in potassium for you. Now that's been a very quick whistle-stop tour on the things we think about, how we can help you to continue and to enjoy what you eat if you know the tricks. If you want some further information, I really would advise you to speak to your kidney team and ask to see a dietitian. Not everybody will need to follow the restrictions that we've sort of been through or need to make those tweaks and find those way around. But if you do need to modify your diet, we can help you find those ways to still incorporate foods you enjoy. A note of caution, be really careful about looking at the internet on these things. We have quite a few people that come to us that actually find by looking at certain sites, they end up finding they're following a lot more restrictive diets than they actually need to, and there's no value to anybody in that. So I'm going to just point you in the direction of one that I think is really good for kidney disease, and that's Kidney Care UK, because all the content in there is reviewed by dietitians. So I can completely trust that on there. They have a section on lifestyle. Diabetes UK is also excellent if you have diabetes, so worth having a look at. In terms of what's on the Kidney Care UK website, there's some information around sort of diet sheets around managing fluid and salt, one about the general balance. There's a bit on there about potassium as well. And they've got some really nice recipe books, so ones you can download or order. And these will be full of things that would be fine for anybody with kidney disease to have. They've also got some nice interactive kidney kitchen pages where they've got some YouTube videos of recipes being cooked. And just an example here, and to make the point really earlier, that you can tweak your recipes to enjoy eating more of what you like. So if you really love mince pies and you're a bit of a cook, or you know somebody who will cook them for you, there is a recipe on there that uses cooking apple or apple in there instead of so much dried fruit, and that way you can make a filling which is much lower in potassium if that's something that you've been advised to cut down on. You can actually use that recipe and eat more of that food that you enjoy. So do take a look at those also if you're a bit of a chef. I think that's everything from me, but I will welcome any questions and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Harriet. Clearly, there's a lot for people to learn and remember when it comes to diet, food, and the impact it has on kidneys and overall health. I do recall you and Alison, your renal social work colleague, running the first kidney kitchen classes for patients in Bangor. In what way do you think these helped individuals learn about food?
Yeah, so that's something we set up a good few years ago, and then ran across the 3 centres, didn't we? Was it 2 years ago now? And unfortunately, due to COVID, those have just been paused at the moment. But I think they were a really good, practical way of people learning about food. So I think it means a lot more if you're actually you're cooking, you're looking at ingredients on the back of packets. You're just talking about practical hints and tips, and it's a lot easier to sink in than just looking at, you know, a black and white leaflet or having someone talk to you about it in a dialysis unit. And what was really nice was that people with kidney disease who were there together could share their hints and tips and their ideas. So the different things that people had found that had worked for them. And it became a bit of a social thing, really, just that sort of peer support that we've talked a little bit about earlier, a space to enjoy doing something together and maybe also talk about the things that are worrying people or other sorts of social factors that people had on their mind.
Yeah, so there was the educative and the social support too. Could you see them working virtually? Could you see that happening?
I think the nearest thing that we've got at the moment to that is the Kidney Care UK YouTube videos where they do the cooking demos. I don't know, that could be something. I think it's something we've looked at. Kidney Wales are looking at. I don't know if Judith can chip in as to where we're up to with that actually, but it was a project that I know a team in Swansea, I think, were looking at, as to whether people could actually do it live. You know, cooking with people live is an idea, isn't it? So it's certainly, yeah, it's something to think about.
Yeah, well, hopefully maybe Judith could feed back with the rest of this information after the event.
Will do, thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the presentations. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending, and I'd especially like to thank our speakers today for their time. I would also like to thank the Welsh Kidney Charities for arranging the conference. I'm sure you'll agree that what we've heard today is useful and informative. So the theme of tonight's conference was keeping well this winter, and our speakers have offered some valuable tips for achieving this. So to sum up, Catherine, the psychologist, reminds us it's all about balance. Winter can put us into threat and drive systems. So remember, self-soothing tips, what might work for you? Our second presentation from Hayley, Joe and Helen was about peer support, and to remind us it's for everyone living with kidney disease. An understanding, listening ear, Careline, Kidney Cafe, Facebook groups. Please contact them to learn more, get involved, or please make contact to share your lived experiences and become a peer mentor. Claire, the physio, encourages us to stay well in winter. Think about what motivates you and find something that you enjoy, and don't take yourself too seriously. Get stuck in. Geraint, on the other hand, is inviting you. Maybe self-soothing and finding something you enjoy might inspire you this winter to join Geraint in his virtual walking group. You could claim your woolly hat and badge. Paul Popham Fund Facebook page. Harriet reminds you to ask to see a dietitian if you've not had the opportunity already. They can help you make a plan to eat well this winter. So this winter, stay as well as you can, and don't forget the brilliant peer support that Hayley, Joe and Helen talked about. Before we finish this conference, I've been asked to share some significant information that came out of a recent Q&A event organised by Kidney Wales on the 19th of November. Dr. Mike Stevens, consultant transplant surgeon based at University Hospital Cardiff, Wales in Cardiff, answered some of your questions regarding vaccines for COVID-19. There was a question submitted asking whether the new Pfizer vaccine is rolled out, if and when it's rolled out, is it suitable for transplant patients who are immune suppressed? I'll read this to ensure I don't get anything wrong. So Dr. Mike responded, there are approximately 200 vaccines currently undergoing trial. The Pfizer, Moderna and Oxford vaccines are indicating promising results, but no vaccine has yet been approved for widespread use. The Pfizer vaccine is live, but some of the other vaccines undergoing trials are not. The vaccine will be able to be used in all groups, including all renal patients, but will only be recommended for widespread use if scientists and your healthcare team are confident they are safe for you as a kidney patient. The vaccines have not been tested specifically on transplant patients, so they can't say for certain how effective they will be, but it is expected that there will still be benefit in transplant patients having the vaccine. The Oxford trial is giving positive indications that effectiveness does not diminish with age and decreasing immunity. The aim of the government is to vaccinate a high percentage of the population to provide herd immunity that will protect us all, even those who have no immunity to the virus. Dr. Mike went on to say that Wales is part of a UK-wide procurement of several different types of vaccine and will get a share for deployment if approved by the regulators. There will only be a small amount of a vaccine at first, and the rollout of the vaccine will be guided by the recommendations for prioritisation. Advice on who the priority groups are for the vaccines can be accessed via the www.gov.uk website. Alternatively, you can find the link on Kidney Wales's website, which is www.kidneywales.cymru.news. Here you can also read more about the Q&A session and excuse me, other questions. Just need to take a break. We will be circulating a recording and a transcript of the conference a little later with an evaluation form. This will include responses to all the questions submitted for today's conference. Please let us know what do you think worked well or what didn't work well. Also, we'd be very interested to hear about the things you think we may have missed out and the things you think would prove useful for such conferences, events or newsletters in the future. Even being optimistic about a vaccine, I don't think we're quite finished yet with virtual conferences like this, so any tips for improvement would be welcomed. The Welsh Kidney Charities, along with NHS colleagues, will continue to work together to provide regular information and to offer advice and support, and we will all strive to provide you with the best access to services both inside and outside the NHS. Thank you all so very much for joining us this evening. Take care of your health, well-being and each other, and good night.